You know what's wild about underdogs? History shows they win about 29% of the time, but only when they completely change the rules of engagement. And there's no better example of this than the story of David and Goliath in the Bible.
That's such an interesting story.
David wasn't just any boy. He had a special job, looking after his father's sheep. He spent his days and nights in the fields, making sure no harm came to them.
He was following a proven strategy of God's will and purpose for his life.
Well, exactly. And what's fascinating is how his background as a shepherd prepared him perfectly for this moment. With only his staff and sling, he fought them off, protecting his flock.
You know what's remarkable about that? The way David's experience fighting predators gave him this unique perspective on combat that no traditional warrior would have developed.
Right. And here's what's really interesting. Psychological research shows that people who face real dangers early in life often develop better risk assessment skills. David had already faced lions and bears, so he could evaluate the threat of Goliath more objectively than the trained soldiers.
That makes me think about how modern military strategists actually study this story. They call it the advantage of asymmetric warfare. When you can't match your opponent's strength, you have to change the nature of the conflict.
Oh man, that's exactly what makes this so relevant today. You know, a study of modern business competitions showed that smaller companies beat industry giants about 23% of the time when they use unconventional strategies. Pretty similar to that underdog statistic.
Well, that really puts David's decision to refuse the traditional armor in perspective, doesn't it? He was essentially choosing to maintain his competitive advantage. David believed in the power of God.
And what's fascinating is how this story connects to modern psychology. Experts call it the burden of armor effect, where conventional wisdom and traditional approaches can actually handicap performance. David understood something that behavioral scientists have only recently started studying.
So what do you make of the musical aspect of David's character? It seems like such an unusual combination, warrior and musician.
When he wasn't with his sheep, David loved playing his harp. He played so beautifully that even the birds stopped to listen. Well, research shows that musical training enhances hand-eye coordination and spatial awareness, exactly the skills David would have needed for accuracy with his sling. It's like he was cross-training without even knowing it.
That's fascinating. Like how modern athletes often use dance or martial arts to improve their primary sport performance.
Exactly. And you know what's really interesting? David's combination of shepherding, music, and combat fits that pattern perfectly.
The way you're describing it makes me think about how modern leadership theory emphasizes the value of diverse experiences over specialized training.
Yeah, and here's something mind-blowing. Anthropologists have found that ancient slings could launch projectiles at speeds of up to 100 miles per hour. So David wasn't just bringing a primitive weapon, he was basically wielding the ancient equivalent of a high-powered rifle.
That's incredible context. It really changes how we view the whole confrontation, doesn't it?
Well, and here's another layer. Historical records show that skilled slingers were actually highly valued in ancient armies. So David wasn't choosing an inferior weapon. He was using what military historians now recognize as one of the most effective ranged weapons of the ancient world.
You know, this whole discussion is really challenging our assumptions about power and advantage, isn't it? It's like what we perceive as weaknesses might actually be strengths in disguise.
That's so true, and it connects to something really important in modern innovation theory. David said, "I'll fight Goliath. God has protected me from lions and bears. While I guarded my sheep, he will protect me now."
Absolutely right. And you know what's really interesting? The king gave David armor, but it was too heavy. So David decided to use just his sling and some stones.
As Goliath moved into attack, David took a stone, put it in his sling, and swung it with all his might. The stone flew through the air and hit Goliath right in the forehead. Goliath fell to the ground, and David won.
Well, this story really seems to have endless layers of relevance to modern challenges.
And that's probably why it's endured. It's not just about one battle, it's about God's principles of innovation and courage. Modern analysis shows that stories with these elements of unexpected victory are shared about 63% more often than other narratives.
What do you think are the key lessons we should take from this?
Well, I think David's bravery showed that no matter how small you are, you can overcome big challenges with faith and courage. And that young boy, David, would go on to be one of the greatest kings of Israel. And secondly, what looks like a disadvantage often turns out to be an advantage if you're creative enough to leverage it properly. Type Amen if you love this Bible story analysis.